Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Empower Your Soul. I am here today for part two of the energetic protection podcast episode that was just released to talk a little bit more in detail about auras. And this is going to be such an interesting topic because you kind of can't talk about one without the other. And I know that I mentioned it's so important to protect your energy, but now we're going to get into the detail of what does that actually look like and why do you actually need to protect it? And do you need all these crystals and all of these routines? No, absolutely not. So I'm going to teach you the foolproof way about how you can manage your own energy and your aura and what it says about you. So let's get to it because this is such an interesting topic to me. And what's so interesting for me is that auras are, just to back it up for a minute, they are scientifically proven, right? And this is the energetic field that is around all of us. And have we all seen those amazing photography things? Like if you go to Salem, Massachusetts, or probably other places too, like you can go sit in a booth and like put your hands on this electric paddle and it'll show you your aura. Like it is scientifically proven. You can see it in photos. Yes, that is real. And so what is so interesting about the aura is that you can't see it, but it contains essentially your energetic fingerprints. But not only us, because when I'm talking about auras, I'm going to be talking about us as humans having this energetic bubble around us. But in reality, everything is energy. And so we are not the only things with this energetic bubble, because at the quantum level, at the smallest atomic level, essentially everything is made up of energy. And like, so if you think about the stuff that's all around you, the solid stuff, the table, this microphone, right? It is literally just energy really tightly bound together to create physical matter. And so when I'm talking about auras, this will mostly be talking about the human perspective today, but I want you to know that everything is energy. Everything has an aura, like especially trees, grass, water, all these things. And this is where the elementals conversation comes in as well. But everything is made up of energy. And so you can interact and read and understand energy. And we're going to talk a little bit about that again today. So it is a very, very interesting, in-depth topic that I'm going to cover, hopefully very simply for all of you today. So what is in these energy fields, these auras for humans? And again, I'm going to keep the human experience. And my dog has joined me for this podcast reading today. Dogs have auras too, everybody. So what is held in the auras essentially are energetic fingerprints of the reality of you. So this can include anything past, present, or potential futures, again, because we have free will. And so it is kind of like the encyclopedia of you generally in this lifetime. I could also argue past life information. I could also argue Akashic records. I'm not quite sure where that lands, but essentially the aura contains all of the energy that people need to know about you here in this physical lifetime. It's all there. It's all there. And so that's why knowing about auras and understanding about auras is so important, because auras, or your energetic field, is the conduit in which we can communicate to each other energetically. Right? It's wild. It's wild because you can, what popped into my mind right now is the telepathy tapes, and I'm trying to figure out why Spirit would talk about the telepathy tapes. How do you think it works, right? Because the telepathy tapes, let's see if I can get that out of my mouth. Maybe I'm not supposed to be talking about it. The fact that I keep tripping over that word is essentially tapping into the energetic imprints of other people and reading and communicating through energy. And the easiest way to do that is, for example, psychically, right? So when a psychic connects to you, they're connecting to the energy, the aura of you, and they're reading from it, which can be really interesting because the items that have the strongest energetic fingerprint tend to come up first. So, for example, if you were to tap into me right now psychically, you might feel the energy of school. You might feel the energy of my kids because I just put them on the bus for their last day, right? you might put into the fingerprint of maybe we're going to go do something fun when they get home from their half day today, right? So like this is the stuff that's most prevalent in my energetic field right now. And so if you were to tap into me psychically, that's likely, please don't, I'm sorry. I like my energetic protection. I'm like a fox. You can't tap into me unless I let you. So you might see that first in my energetic field because it's the most prevalent stuff. Now, that's not to say that the rest of the stuff isn't there or it's not accessible. It's just you have to kind of like dig for it, just like you would with an encyclopedia. You have to look for it. You have to open that chapter. You have to ask questions. Go to that kind of energetic area of my aura to read it. But essentially, once you connect to somebody's aura, you're kind of an open book, and kind of like all bets are off in terms of what they can see and they can't see. Now, are there some protective things that you like to hide that's going to be very, very hard for other people to find? Sure, absolutely. Just like an encyclopedia, right? It's going to be like really far in the weeds. It's not going to be the index, right? So that is the reality of psychic work, is that I'm going into your energy, your auric field, and pulling out information, essentially whatever I want to pull out or whatever's most prevalent to pull out, whatever's the loudest vibration. And so this is the key difference between mediumship, because I'm kind of connecting to the aura in terms of the information, but I'm not pulling it out of your psychic energy. I'm connecting to departed loved ones and creating that connection energetically, but I'm not pulling stuff out of the aura to give to you. And I think that's, again, the biggest misconception about mediumship versus psychic. And I know I've covered this a couple times, but let's talk about it from an aura perspective, because if I was reading your departed loved ones psychically, I would either be connecting to your auric field and pulling out the information, or I would be connecting to your departed loved one's auric field and pulling out information. It's not a communication, it's a pulling of information. And so that's a very different experience than me connecting. And this is the difference between the telepathy tapes. This is a very different energy of me connecting to converse, to have communication and receive information. And that is more respectful and more typical of what we expect communication to look like, because we say what we're going to say and we're not going to say certain things that we're not comfortable with. And so mediumship is not necessarily connecting to the aura, but there is some sort of energetic connection. I got to be honest, I don't really understand the difference between the two, but there is an energetic connection, but it's respectful, it's boundaried, it's having a communication like it is today. And so when you're connecting to auric fields energetically, nothing is off limits. And so this makes it very difficult. Let me see where Spirit wants to go with this. I'm kind of transitioning to the next topic, but at the same time, I want to acknowledge this is where it can get really confusing, because if you are an empath and you're in close physical proximity to people, you are going to essentially be in other people's auras and taking on their information, their feelings, like it's your own, because it's not just information in the auric fields, it's also the energy of people. It's whether they're happy or sad, it's the emotional states, it's the physical pains, right? Like all of this stuff is stored in the aura as well. And so that's why when you are in the same room with people and your auric fields overlap, intentionally or not intentionally, this is where empaths come from, because you are literally sitting in their energetic field and taking it on as your own, and you don't know the difference. So let's talk about these auric fields. Let's talk about like physically what they look like and what that means for all of you. And I'm going to save color for last, because I think that's the most, everyone wants to know what color their aura is. There's like a literal subreddit on Reddit about like, tell me my auric color. But that's not even the biggest part of the story, because the color is just kind of your emotional state, which we're going to get to in a minute. But what is so much more important is the size and texture of your aura. Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of the size of your aura, you can generally, if you put your arms out, your body bubble typically is the size of your aura. So if you put your arms out, it's kind of the end of your arms. It's typically about, 2-3 feet or so. And so that is kind of your energetic bubble that's all around you all the time. That's why people are always very sensitive to don't step in my bubble. Okay. Normal. So and all of these are normal to an extent, right? But if you have a larger auric field, which mine tends to be very big, and I know that, it is typically because you want to be able to read the room. You want to be able to predict people's behaviors, thoughts, patterns before it happens. I got the bell out. I don't know if you heard it. It's like on its last fritz. I think I got to charge it. The ding is a little pathetic today. Sorry, spirits, it is. So when you have that big auric field, you essentially are proactively reading into the energy of everybody else, subconsciously or consciously, so that you can be better prepared to have conversations, to know who to trust, who not to trust, what topics to cover, what topics not to cover. And so when you have that large auric field, it tends to be a safety protection mechanism, probably for people who haven't had the best experiences with people. Okay. Likewise, that's kind of the negative side of it. Likewise, positively, if you think about salespeople, they generally have a really, really big aura because they're doing the same thing, but they're using it for their own like advantage, right? It's not protection based. It's more proactive, going on the offense based, right? Because now they know who to talk to, how to work the crowd, what to talk to get them engaged, right? And so this is probably where a lot of the extroverts stay, is having these very large auras, so that they can read the room. Same thing. Now, when we're talking about the inverse of that, the small auras, this tends to be when you keep your aura really, oh, by the way, the size of a big aura, it could take up like an entire room. Okay. So like if I'm sitting in this room right now recording this podcast, my aura is probably extending a little bit outside of my space. And that will typically happen when I'm very comfortable with the space or comfortable with an environment. I kind of let my guard down and I let my aura out. So it's not always like a toxic thing or a sales or an extrovert thing. Sometimes it's just when you're relaxed, you kind of let your aura go. You don't worry about it. In terms of smaller auras, which I know personally a lot of my friends are, I've kind of measured them, which is really interesting to me. You will keep your aura close to you. So when I'm saying smaller, it's like within the 3 feet. It can be as little as like right on your body, or just a little tiny, like an inch or two off your body. Could be slightly bigger. But when people tend to bring in their auras, that also is a protection mechanism, but it's different. It's a different protection mechanism because you don't want to feel the energy of other people. You maybe you are an empath and you're super sensitive to everybody's energy, and you're going into a concert with hundreds of people. You keep your energy really close to you. You do not want to read the room. There are too many people. We're talking about like carnivals, festivals, grocery stores. You're going to keep your auric field really close to you so that you are not bombarded and impacted by other people's energy, or proactively reading them because you don't really care. You're only focused on your own energy. And that's when you would bring in your energy, your auric field really close to you, when you don't want to read the energy of others. So it's interesting because I think it gets to people who are sensitive to energy, but don't necessarily want it. It's so interesting, right? Don't want to be proactive about it, versus like survivors of like abuse probably have that really big aura because they want to know, they want to be prepared because they have the tools to be able to know when to run, adjust the behavior, manage the environment of the room, versus those that keep their energy really small, their aura really small, and they're just worried about themselves and they don't care about other people. They're just going to focus on their own protection. Isn't that interesting? I find it so fascinating. So that is kind of the differentiation between the size of your aura. And then in terms of the texture of your aura, this is really interesting as well, because if you listen to a lot of the professionals in the space, they will tell you to put a golden egg around you, or put an egg around you, which is, by the way, the outside of your aura, right? Put on the outside of your aura, put a mirror so that it bounces energy off of you. And so, yeah, you can do that. But I think the biggest picture, or the biggest understanding with that, is that you can kind of change the texture of your aura to keep out and or to let in certain energies. Now, I don't know how all of this works. I maybe I should test it out, but I will tell you, I tend to see 3 different types of aura textures. And it's probably a spectrum, to be honest with you. But number 1, very solid auras. So it's like concrete wall on the outside, no one can get in. unless they are allowed to get in. That is my aura through and through. I can, it's like a two-way mirror. I extend my energy out so I can feel other people's emotions, being able to read the room. Again, toxic, right? Toxic background. So my aura is really big, but also it's very solid. So even though you're in my energy, I can read your energy if you're not protected, but you cannot read mine. I love you, Jess. I'm going to call you out. I have one of the weather vane witches. She gets so frustrated. She can't read me. And I'm like, you're not allowed to. This has been me my entire life. No one can read my energy, right? Like unless I let them in. So when I'm saying a solid aura, it's, if you think about an egg, it truly is like an egg. There's no cracks. There's no space for you to get in. It is solid on the outside. And unless you are invited, you cannot get in. Other textures include what I call the cheese grater. There's probably a better term for it, but essentially there's a whole lot of holes. It's like a sieve on the outside of your auric field. So there's like holes everywhere, and it could be in a certain place. It could be in the front or the back. But essentially these are the people who literally let everything in. They let all of the energy in. And so, you know, they have not only the big aura, so they're kind of letting people, blah, blah, blah. Let me see if I can explain it, because there's a nuance here. They have the big aura so that they can proactively read people, but also it's a sieve, it's wide open. So a lot of times they'll take on that energy as their own and they don't even know it. And so this is where a lot of empaths come in, because a lot of empaths do come from that toxic background, that toxic childhood, the traumatic childhood. So they tend to have very large auras that are like a cheese grater and literally let everything in all the time. And that leads to a lot of people getting very overstimulated in public places, not knowing what's theirs or other people's. And so this is like the ultimate definition of unprotected, because you're letting everything in, and it's kind of like an open door. You can come, you can go, it doesn't matter, right? But you have no say in what comes in or goes because you have so many freaking holes all over your aura. The last one I see very rarely, and I see this with typical metaphysical practitioners. And I call this the tear. And I call it the tear because for the most part, their aura is very solid. But in one or two places, there's a tear in their aura where they let things in because they want to be aware of anything that is big, anything that is strong from other people, so that they can kind of be on, how do I want to say this? Because again, it overlaps, and apologies if it's a little bit confusing, but essentially they let people in. They have a cracked door. So it's never actually closed. It's always open in case something needs to get through. I guess that's the way I would explain it. So there's kind of these three different textures as well. Very solid, cheese grater, and like this tear, this cracked door, where if something needs to get through, they're giving that space for it to come through. So for the most part, they're protected though, except for the stuff that needs to come through. So those are kind of the biggest descriptions there. And then in terms of color, hang on, I'm not going to talk about color yet. I'm going to talk about how you can navigate the size and texture of your aura. I feel like there's a that's what she said joke in there somewhere. Probably. Someone probably already said it. So what is so cool about these auras is that you can actually check what your aura looks like. Okay, there's a few different ways, because what you can do, if you have a buddy and if you have dowsing rods, you can actually use the dowsing rods to check the size of the aura. So what will happen, and I'm sure you can YouTube it or whatever. Oh, there's a thumbs up on my screen. You can have somebody kind of stand across the room, and you have the dowsing rods, and you're kind of holding them just neutrally, and they're kind of facing forward. And then as you walk towards the person, you set the intention that the dowsing rods are going to move out. So they're going to kind of go outside, kind of like turning on a faucet, like they're going to be outside, so that when you hit their auric field, the end of their energy. So as you walk towards them, excuse me, you will see those tines on the dowsing rod start to open up. And it's the coolest fucking thing in the world because it's the literal physical, it is the physical manifestation of your aura and you can see it with your eyes. So I love shit like that. I love it. So that's one way you can do it. If it's just you and it's your auric field, that's really hard to do the dowsing rods by yourself. Got to be honest with you. So you can use your clairs, your clairsentience. You can maybe feel towards the end of your aura. And sometimes you're just going to have to know, you're going to have to use your claircognizance and just know my aura is really big today or really small today. But the reality is you don't even need to know. You just have to set the intention of what kind of aura you want. And that is the wildest part about all of this stuff because it all comes down to intention. Comes down to intention. So if you decide, I'm going to the mall later with my kids. I wish I was going to the beach, but it's cold and rainy. And I know there's going to be a lot of people there. And I don't care. And I don't need to protect myself from everybody else. I just don't want to take in their energy. I'm going to set the intention that I'm going to bring my aura really close to my body. It's going to be really small. Or maybe it's small enough that my kids are in there so I can kind of still navigate their energy, but not anyone else. Right? And I'm going to set the texture of this thing really solid because I really don't care about getting anyone else in. And maybe this is the fun part Spirit's kind of showing me is that you can change your texture and your size depending on the person, depending on who you're around. Because with the kids, I want to be a cheese grater, right? I want to know their energy. I know what they're doing. I want to be mama bear in a public space to make sure they feel comfortable and protected. But with everybody else, it's solid, right? They can't get in. They can't read me. And so you can literally just use the intention and set the intention of what size aura do you want. Are you going into a party where you need to network? Are you going to like a networking event at work? Lord help you if you are. I'm so sorry. But if you're going to a networking event, you want your aura really big. You want your aura probably to be like, I'm going to say somewhere between like a cheese grater and a tear. Like you want it generally protected. For me personally, I really like to protect my energy, especially in places like that, because I only have so much energy anyway, and I don't want to be influenced by other people. So I will tend to keep my energy really, really solid. But maybe every time I talk to one specific person, I'll put that tear in, right? I'll open it up just a little bit to get the information, or maybe it'll be a cheese grater just with the person that I'm talking to so that I can get their information and pull it in and know what to talk about and know how to approach them and have the conversation and what kind of, here we go. Toxic me 101, change my personality, change my approach depending on the person so that I land a little bit better, especially in networking. Not that I typically like to do that, but that's what you can do, right? You can change your approach, your energy. So it is literally just all about the intention. And if you forget, like if you set the intention, then you forget to reset it, it's going to naturally reset anyway with like a scene change of environment. Like naturally you're going to, because you're smart. You're smart. Your energy is smart. Your higher self is really smart. So it's going to adjust for the most part the way that you would want it to adjust. But it's really fun to play with it and see how it impacts you. So I'm going to challenge you. Where are you going today? What are you doing today? And you can do this whether it's in person, which I think I cover in a minute, or it's like online or virtual. Right? Are you going to make your energy big so that you can bring in the energy of everybody else? Are you going to make it really cheese grater because you want to feel what everybody else is feeling, right? Because maybe you're in a practice circle. Or do you want to make it nice and small and tight because you're at a day job, maybe still in corporate America, and you want it solid so that no one impacts your energy, right? So play with it. Play with these different things and see how it makes you feel or what comes in. And I think this is the biggest thing about learning how to be an empath, because if you suspect you're an empath and you start playing with your aura, because if you suspect you're an empath, you're likely larger aura size, likely a cheese grater, and you're likely taking on, again, the personalities, the physical pain, the emotions of others without even realizing it. So when you start shutting it down, and this was like mind-blowing number one when I was learning about being an empath and learning about auras, is that I probably could have been diagnosed with bipolar. And I don't want to minimize bipolar at all, but my mood would change in an instant. And I would wake up some days and just be like totally blown over, couldn't get out of bed, right? Like totally exhausted. and I don't know what's going on, right? I could be with my kids and suddenly I had a raging headache and I had no idea why. And the reality of the situation was because I had that large aura and I didn't know I was an empath, so it was kind of cheeseclothy, right? Cheese gratery, is that I was literally taking on the energy of everybody else and I thought it was mine. I thought I was the manic one. I thought I was the depressed one. I thought I was the one with the physical pains all the time. And then when I realized it's not me. So, for example, when I first read a couple books about these auras, I would sit in my car with my kids, nice and close proximity, right? And again, I would have a raging headache out of nowhere. I'd have a stomach ache out of nowhere. I was fine all morning, and suddenly now I had a headache and a stomach ache. So I'm like, who has the headache? And my daughter would raise her hand. Who has the stomach ache? And my son raised his hand. And that's when I was like, holy shit, none of this is mine. And I have to tell you, because I know this now, whenever I get a sudden feeling of a headache or sudden feeling of emotions that come on really, really suddenly, or physical pain that comes on really suddenly, whether or not I'm in proximity with somebody to ask, I'm like, is it mine? And 9 times out of 10, it's not. So that reminds me to make my aura really solid, make my aura maybe a little bit smaller. I don't want to pick up on the energy of others. So this is a really cool way for you empaths to use your aura to test out, is it me or is it not me? And if you're not sure, you can always kind of use your intention, ask your team, or ask the people around you if they have a headache or if something's wrong with them. I suspect this podcast, if you're listening, is going to be a game changer for quite a few people because it is wild. It's wild. Okay, so let's talk about color of auras, because that seems to be the number one topic most people want to know about, is what's the color of my aura? So here's the reality of auras, and I'm not going to get into like the nitty gritty because there's many different layers to an aura, right? There's all these different layers, and I think there's like 10 or 12 of them. I can't remember all the different layers. So you have lots of different layers in your aura. You have lots of different colors in your aura. This is not the scientific stuff that I want to know about. I am not the expert here. Go find an expert if you really want to go and learn all the different like energy levels within your aura. But in reality, the reason I mention that is because your aura can have many different colors depending on different things, different levels that you're looking at, different places in your body. Like they can all have different colors. So when I'm talking about colors, know that it can be one. It could be, you could have 2 colors. You could have all the colors. I've seen people with rainbow auras. I've seen people with like golden auras. I've seen people with silver auras. And if you look up the meaning of these, you know, I think there's a lot on Google that you can find, but you have to figure out what resonates for you, because the reality is that auras, I don't want to say they're like a specific language. When I was asking my team what the colors meant, I don't think there's a standard operational definition for the colors of auras, because everybody seems to have their own version of what color means what. That's kind of what I was trying to say. And so when you Google things, you might see red has different definitions depending on which web page you are navigating to. And so this is a lot like everything else in the metaphysical world, where the energy is there, but you have to interpret it the way that you're going to interpret it. And when I asked my team, how do I interpret the colors of auras? Because I have a ton of aura books. And like, again, they all have different definitions for the color red. They said just relate it to the chakras. That's what they said. They're like, you already know the meanings of the chakras. So all of the different colors of the chakras will show up for you as the colors of the auras. So if I see somebody with red, they are rooted, they are grounded, they are focused on the physical world, right? Like they are in reality. So that is my definition of red. When I see somebody that is purple, that's related to the third eye. I know they're super freaking intuitive. I know that they are probably psychic, whether they know it or not. They pick up on the energy and interpret it very easily from others. I know when I see the color blue, they're a medium, because that is related to the throat chakra. So when I see it right away, I know that they're a medium. They can talk to the dead. Again, whether they know it or not, right? And so that's how a lot of these metaphysical practitioners, we've all heard the stories. I've told you my story of a medium walking up to somebody and being like, you have my gift. the word gift makes me angry, but you have my gift. You're a medium too. And that's how they know, is because in their mind, they have either a way to call out that they know that that's a fellow medium, that's a peer to them. And, or for me, I see the color blue around you. And that's how I know you're a medium. Right. And it's literally, isn't that freaking cool? I'm sorry. Can I just take a moment because it's fucking cool. It's so super cool. But here's the thing about like, so we can go through all the chakras. I'm not going to go there, but you can look, sorry, apparently I am. So red is rooted, grounded, right? All the things. No, I'm not going to do it. My team's like, do it. I'm like, I don't want to do it. But look for the meanings of the chakras, right? Because so if it's orange, that's related to your sacral. That's all about like sexuality and emotions and all these big things, right? Like, so it's partnerships, it's creative, it's passionate, right? If I see yellow, I know that this person is very balanced because that's the solar plexus, right? I know there's emotions in the solar plexus too, but yellow for me is like you're trustworthy, you're balanced, you're kind of balanced between, your head and your heart, right? Like there's just something about balance there. Yellow for me tends to be a very motherly color that I'll see come through, very caring, very loving. Again, green is the heart chakra. So green can be like they are really heart-centered and focused. They have so much love. For me, that's also the color of healing because green is the color of healing. That's Archangel Raphael, who's, healing archangel. So green for me is heart, space, healing, loving. We talked about purple, or we talked about blue in the throat. We talked about purple in the third eye. And then the crown is white. And the crown to me is like that equivalent of Christ consciousness, the goodness, connected to spirit, connected to source, like pure light. So when I see someone with like white or gold or silver, I know that they are a more quote unquote pure soul. I don't know how to say that. They're more connected, they're more in line with their soul and more in line with unconditional love and that higher level, higher responsibility. I don't know how to say that. Does that make sense? I don't see white or gold or silver very often, which is interesting because I think a lot of people start seeing it as like white or clear, but I think that's because you just haven't developed seeing the colors yet. So there's a difference between seeing like a shimmery silver or shimmery white versus just like a fuzzy white. Those are two different things. Because if you see a fuzzy white, is more than likely that's the aura and you can't see the color yet. Oh, I'm really going down into the weeds here. I hope you don't mind. I'm going to go a little bit further into the weeds, and I promise I'll come up because the color to me not only is related to the chakras, but the tone, the lightness or darkness of the color tells me how far in it you are. So for example, if I take mediumship and it comes in as light blue, then either you don't know you're a medium or you're just starting your journey. If it comes in as dark blue, holy moly, you've been doing it for years or you're really, really good at it. Okay. It's the same with purple. If it's a light colored purple, you're just starting. If it's dark colored purple, you are a master psychic, right? So there's those. So depending on lightness or darkness, that gives you a key as well. And then the wonky colors that you might see are like muddy brown or gray. And that just means that it's messed up. Like your energy is not great. I got to say it. Gray or brown tends to be sickness for me. It's somebody who's like foggy, off balance, like their energy is off and they need some clarity. And it's like mud, I guess is the way that I put it. So it's not that they're bad people, not at all. It just means that they either need to like go through a Reiki session and get some clearing and, or they got something going on. Maybe they're sick. Maybe they have cancer. Maybe they have, mental health struggles that they're going through. So be aware of that. If you see that, it's not like bad. It's just more an indicator of the health of their energy. And that's the reality of it. So the last few questions I received about the auras, I feel like I've answered them, but I want to make sure I'm covering them explicitly because folks put the time to put the questions into my Instagram story. If you're not following me on Instagram, that's where I kind of pitch, give me ideas for the podcast. I have questions. What do you want to know? So if you're not following me on the Instagram stories, make sure you are. So the first question is, do you need to be in person to kind of have that energy interaction? And the answer is no. I think the difference is when you're in person, it just tends to happen more naturally because you're naturally in the physical bombardment space of people. However, it does not have to happen in person because all you need is an intention. And energy does not need time or space. So you just have to have the intention of connecting to somebody energetically, and you will be connected to their aura, their energy, regardless of where you are. So no, you don't need to be in person. How do you know if you're taking on the sickness and colds of others? So I kind of covered that a little bit. If you suspect you are, again, check with your higher self, check with your team, see if there's something coming up that, if they can point you, is this mine or is this not mine? Is this somebody else's? You can also, again, ask to remove it if it's not yours, and or there was one more. I already talked about like changing your aura. You can do that. And then something cool that you can do is that if you acknowledge it, it might go away. So you might be like, hey, so like, for example, when I'm sitting in the car with my kids and I said, hey, who's got the headache? Who has the stomach ache? As soon as it's acknowledged, sometimes it goes away. And I know it's not mine. And then just pay attention to anything that comes on really sudden. If it's not typical for something, a physical or ailment, sickness, colds to come on without, if they come on really sudden, and they don't typically come on really sudden for you. So that's it. So if it's somebody else's energy, though, typically it will go away if you're not in their space anymore, or if you're not connected to them energetically anymore. So if you have like a cold and it lasts a few days, more than likely than not, like it's a real cold. Sorry. I have one more. Oh, the last nugget of gold I'm going to leave you with was something I read in one of the most amazing books ever, and it was it's Why Woo Woo Works, I think is the name of it, and it's like the science behind all of the woo woo stuff and why it works. And what was super cool is they did an experiment in that book, or they researched, I'm not sure. I digress. But that book indicated that the strongest vibration of the aura tends to come from your heart. So your loving heart space tends to send out the strongest energy in your aura. And I think that's why we see all these different layers to an aura, because it's probably different vibrations from each of your chakras kind of coming out. But your strongest energy tends to come from the heart. And so that's why when my team yells at me about mediumship, because they yell at me with love, but they always tell me to make sure I'm bringing my heart into it, because that's the strongest way for me to kind of expand my aura and connect to spirit, is by using my heart space. So I hope that helps. Super interesting, right? All this aura stuff. It's really cool to see how, number one, it impacts us, how, the meshing of auras allows you to take on the energy of others, whether you know it or not. And then like how you can actually change the size, shape, texture of your aura, and you can actually change your auric color too. Now, I feel like that's even more temporary than changing your texture and your size, but you could set the intention of, I want to be blue today. Give me some blue. Give me some dead people to come through today and see what happens. See if it works. All right. I'm going to sign off from there. This has been a long one. I appreciate all of you. I hope this was really informative for all of you. And I wish you the best, from my soul to yours. Take care.